think it's going to be the biggest thing I've ever done. I bought a 17th century book on black magic. And in that book, they teach you how to cast magical spells by writing stories about them. And when you read these stories aloud, they come to life.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2022 horror anthology film Monsters in the Closet. This film is directed by the Snag brothers and it's got quite a large cast list, as you would imagine, for a horror anthology film, so I won't go through the cast. Right, this is a low budget, in fact it's a micro budget and horror anthology film that is due for release early next year. And essentially what we have here is like a no budget version of Goosebumps, I suppose. And the wraparound story that we get here is that there is this horror novelist who has passed away, and he has discovered a way to write stories that once they are spoken out loud, the story basically comes to life. So his daughter comes to his house after his death, discovers this stuff on his computer. He starts reading the stories out on his computer as she finds them, and then we go into the story. And then after each story, the story kind of comes to life in that house, and she's got to kind of deal with the repercussions of that story. Right, what are my thoughts on Monster in the Closet? Well, as I've mentioned, the wraparound story here is okay. I mean, I'll talk briefly on each of the short stories that it shows in this movie. But I do want to mention really here that this film suffers greatly from its lack of budget. It's massively highlighted when you watch this film, which I do think is a bit of a shame, because there's undeniably quite a lot of charm here with this film. It's tongue firmly in its cheek. It doesn't take itself particularly seriously. There's a layer of humour that goes through it that kind of works on the level that it's giving in this film. But for me, it was just, there's low budget and there's no budgets films, and this definitely falls into the category of no budget, and it really shines through when you watch it, which is a shame. Right from the performances from members of the cast here, some of the performances are okay and passable, and some of them are definitely not. The effects, occasionally, some of it again is okay and passable, and some of it definitely is not. So it's very, very patchy a little bit, but it is an intriguing watch, and there are some interesting ideas going on here, but for the most part it doesn't work, mainly due to the budget constraints. So the first story that we get here is like a comedic approach, I suppose, to someone turning into a zombie. It's done from like a first person perspective. It reminded me of that VHS2 story, the cyclist. It was done on a first person perspective. It was a little bit like that. Done from like a comedic perspective. They were quite light and funny, about this woman turning into a zombie but still conscious of what's going on and things like that. So it was a lot of interesting ideas here, but again there were some budgetary problems with it. The second story was about this young couple that have just bought their first new house, and basically it's a dump, and they've got so much work to do to get it livable in. And as the time progresses and they don't make much progress, they end up hating each other and then basically turning on each other as well. Again, massive problems with the budget in the second story. An interesting idea for sure, but again the budget let it down. The third story was basically about a privileged girl that ends up going camping and then turns into a serial killer. It's the best way I can describe it. Yeah. Okay. That's it. Yeah, she's like this privileged girl. Her daddy's has always looked after her. She's some like major lawyer. She goes on this camping trip, ends up killing someone, and then has to kind of cover it up. But she basically ends up killing everybody to a large degree. Yeah, probably my least favourite one. This one, to be fair. And the fourth one was well, they actually called him Frankenstein in the story, but imagine like a Frankenstein mad scientist type person who's trying to reanimate the dead. He accidentally kills his wife, and then he goes through this whole process of reanimating her, but she's not very thankful of the whole procedure, and he has to keep reanimating her because she keeps wanting to commit suicide because she's not happy. Again, an interesting idea. I liked the comedic element of this story, but again, budgetary problems massively let it down. So I think there was just 4 stories here, but the wraparound story was quite involved. So yeah, this one, you kind of feel bad ragging on it a little bit because you could see that there's a lot of creative elements gone into this, some lovely ideas, and if it would have been like a 10 times the budget sort of thing, they probably could have done some really cool stuff with this because some of the stories had decent ideas. And I thought they were pretty interesting, most of them, even though they weren't all brilliant. But yeah, the performances let it down and the budgets let it down. But this fans of anthology films, if you can be forgiving of the budget, there might be some interesting ideas for you to enjoy here. So I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. A low score, I know, but unfortunately I just thought there were too many issues with it to score it any higher than that. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you found it useful. I'll be back with plenty more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.